Good afternoon, everybody. I am Nicole Lieber with Investor Relations here at Lantern Pharma, and welcome to our first quarter 2022 earnings call. I will be your host for today's call. As a reminder, this call is being recorded and all attendees are in a listen-only mode. We will open up the call for questions and answers after management's presentation. Webcast replay of today's conference call will be available on our website at lanternpharma.com after the call. We issued a press release after the market closed today summarizing our financial results and progress across the company for the first quarter of 2022. A copy of this release is available through our website, where you can also find a link to the slides that management will be referencing on today's call. I would like to remind everybody about that remarks about future expectations, claims, and prospectus constitute forward-looking statements for purposes of safe harbor provisions under the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. Lantern Pharma cautions that these forward-looking statements are subject to risks and uncertainties that may cause actual results to differ materially from those anticipated. A number of factors could cause actual results to differ materially from those indicated by forward-looking statements versus the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, results of clinical trials, and the impact of competition. Additional information concerning factors that could cause actual results to differ materially from those in the forward-looking statements can be found in our annual report on Form 10-K for the year ended December 31, 2021, which is on file with the SEC and available on our website. Forward-looking statements made on this conference call are as of today, Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022, and Lantern Pharma does not intend to update any of these forward-looking statements to reflect events from circumstances that occur after today, unless required by law. On today's webcast, we have CEO Panna Sharma, CFO David Margrave, and joining us by audio is Chief Scientific Officer Kishore Bhatia. Panna will begin with an overview of Lantern's operational highlights, after which Dr. Bhatia will provide additional scientific and clinical updates on our portfolio and programs, and then David will discuss our financial results and other corporate events. This will be followed by concluding comments from Panna, and then we will open up the call for questions and answers. And I'd now like to turn the call over to Panna Sharma, CEO and President of Lantern Pharma. Panna, please go ahead.
Thank you, Nicole. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first quarter 2022 earnings call. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you have some questions for us and our team. Right now, we're at a very exciting inflection point at Lantern as we evolve and mature many of our initial AI-driven insights and drug candidates into human clinical trials. We're continuing to make significant and meaningful progress in turning our ideas that have been generated by our AI platform, RADR, into advancing our clinical programs and generating new preclinical compounds. At Lantern, our mission is to use AI, machine learning, and big data to understand the genomics, biomarkers, and biology of cancer better, faster, and with greater precision. We then leverage those understandings and insights to develop targeted oncology therapies at dramatically reduced costs with an improved risk profile for targeted patient populations in a compressed manner. We think that this approach of using AI and data can fundamentally change the lives of more cancer patients faster and with reduced risk. When I joined the company, we had one active drug program. When we took the company public in June of 2020, we had 3 drug programs. Today, we have 9 programs for targeted indications with 3 FDA-granted orphan designations and 1 rare pediatric disease designation. I'm very proud of that accomplishment by our talented team, and that would not have been possible in the traditional drug development process. The short amount of time that I've been at Lantern, we've done this because of data, and more importantly, with AI and with growing our library of algorithms. Right now, we're living in the cusp of a golden age of medicine, and because of AI, cloud computing, and the growing availability of relevant biologic, genomic, and clinical data, we're able to generate insights into the development of new compounds and medicines at a much faster pace. With large-scale technologies now at our disposal and also cost-effective, it's allowing Lantern to bring drugs to market at a fraction of the time and cost of prototypical drug development models. Today, we have two phase 2 clinical trials, two phase 1 clinical trials that will be launching later this year, and several very exciting preclinical programs in cancer indications where there are often no therapies. This first quarter was marked by several operational highlights across almost all of our programs, which I'd like to briefly touch on in the early part of this call. First, the launch of the Harmonic clinical trial for our drug candidate LP300 is intended for never smokers with non-small cell lung cancers progressing. We submitted an amendment to the IND application to the FDA in mid-April and are anticipating the trial launch this summer of 2022. We also made significant progress of LP184 into a phase 1 trial where we're now completing the IND enabling studies and anticipate that we'll be able to submit them to the FDA in Q3 with the potential to launch trials first in human in Q4. At the 2022 ACR conference, we presented a poster showing that our drug candidate LP184 was effective against brain metastases, especially those from lung, skin, breast, and colon cancers. In the US, brain mets occur in about 10 to 30% of all cancers and are diagnosed in over 100,000 people per year. Globally, that number may be closer to 300,000. This is a significant opportunity to meet patient need and at the same time leverage the unique nature of the insights we're generating from our RADR data platform to going after very specific indications. Also now to accelerate the clinical development of LP184 and our other programs, while also being very cost efficient, we established a Lantern subsidiary in Australia. We'll be able to take advantage of their R&D tax incentive program, where we'll earn dollars back for specific R&D spend that we do in Australia. Our Australian subsidiary will allow us to remain capital efficient while also accelerating clinical development and open the avenue for new collaborations with cancer centers in Australia. Our RADR AI platform also this past quarter surpassed 20 billion data points, and its insights continue to accelerate objectives for our drug development programs, including those that led to our newest indication, brain mets and ATRT. Additionally, we are also expanding the functionality of the platform and of the algorithm so that we can better predict new concepts such as synthetic lethality and improve potential combination regimens. Again, we also file patents around these novel ideas. This past quarter, we filed an additional patent application for RADR covering an ensemble approach towards automated algorithm creation for drug sensitivity prediction. In our newest collaboration, which is a fundamental part of our business model, is with the Greehey Children's Cancer Research Institute, which we announced in February. In this research collaboration, we're expanding our focus on rare pediatric cancers. This research has initially focused on advancing LP184 into childhood cancer indications using models developed by Dr. Peter Houghton at the Greehey Children's Cancer Institute at University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. So far, we've launched early studies and we'll have a briefing on our findings later this quarter, but LP184 has demonstrated very promising efficacy in a number of pediatric cancer models. Now, the volatility in the biotech markets continues, especially among microcap and small cap companies, and we continue to feel that our valuation is hyper attractive for investors. With a valuation near our cash position, our board announced in March that they had approved an extension of our existing share purchase program through the end of July 31st. This authorizes us to purchase up to an additional $3.6 million worth of the company's stock. My colleague David, sitting next to me, will give you more details on that into the financial section. I'd like to spend some additional time giving you an update on our upcoming phase 2 trial, the Harmonic trial. The Harmonic clinical trial, which is intended for never smokers in advanced non-small cell lung cancer. And this disease is molecularly very different from lung cancer in smokers. The genomic profile of patients is also significantly different. The Harmonic trial will be a 90-patient, 2-arm, randomized, open-label trial and will include 15 to 20 sites, all in the US, several of which are already being set up. In mid-April, we submitted an amendment to the IND application for the Harmonic trial to the FDA and are targeting enrolling patients later this summer. For the Harmonic trial, our primary endpoints are progression-free survival and overall patient survival. My colleague Kishore will tell you a little bit more about the mechanisms behind LP300 later in his section. In regards to LP184, very excited to tell you that we're getting closer to human trials as we progress on our IND enabling studies. We anticipate the first in human phase 1 clinical trial in Q4 of this year. We've completed several of the IND enabling studies, and we believe that will be completed by Q3 and then submit our IND to the FDA at that point. Kishore will speak more toward this later in the call. Our latest drug program, LP184, which I mentioned in brain mets, is in a very unique area that has high clinical need. We announced at the AACR conference in March our findings in brain metastases. Initial findings have been very exciting since we've demonstrated anti-tumor activity in multiple cell models of brain mets from lung, skin, and breast with some very high sensitivity. Currently, there's a real need for a new approach because many of the existing therapies that are pointed at brain mets really don't cross the blood-brain barrier, and most importantly, have not shown a significant improvement to overall survival. Again, we believe that 10 to 30% of cancer cases metastasize to the brain and are diagnosed in about 100,000 plus patients just in the US, and globally that number is closer to 300,000. Due to LP184's favorable blood-brain barrier permeability, paired with its observed preclinical efficacy in brain mets, we think we're very well positioned for rapid progress and potential success in the brain mets market. In January, we also announced receiving rare pediatric disease designation and orphan designation for another form of CNS cancer, ATRT, which is aggressive and rapidly grows primarily in children in the central nervous system. We also got the rare pediatric disease designation, which underscores the critical value of our growing focus on rare pediatric oncology indications. We think this is a significant opportunity for Lantern and our investors, but most importantly, for children where there have only been 4 new approvals over the last 15 years. In September, as we established an Australian subsidiary, Lantern Pharma Australia Limited, to take advantage of the research and development tax incentives. This will allow us to be more capital efficient and give us greater flexibility by generating cash from tax offsets for our eligible R&D expenditures. We think this will give us more flexibility for our upcoming drug programs, and many of our studies already are underway. So we think that'll improve our capital efficiency going forward. In addition to our clinical programs, we also reached a significant milestone for our RADR AI platform, which earlier in the quarter reached over 20 billion data points. Applying data and machine learning algorithms in RADR allows us to uncover new opportunities in cancer, opportunities that are underserved, unmet, or overlooked. RADR allows us to do several very powerful things. One, finding new indications to revitalize drugs that have been overlooked or shelved, or new indications for our existing drug candidates, develop entirely new drugs based on targets or based on areas where we believe there's going to be activity, and then ultimately find patient populations much faster at a fraction of the cost of traditional patient stratification approaches. And we find those patients that will respond to our therapies or to the therapies of potential collaborators. When we went public in summer of 2020, RADR had about 275 million data points. Today, we're at more than 20 billion. And before the end of this year, we expect to be well above our target of 25 billion data points for the year. And so why is that important? The more data points we have, the more we can understand and model things that may or may not be occurring, just like with any other large complicated system, whether traffic patterns, evolution, the market. And we can explore opportunities where our compounds can potentially change the outcome in certain cancers. As we grow our data points, we're able to discover new places where our drugs work, such as the ones I outlined, like ATRT and brain mets, or we can find new indications or new uses of new drug targets, such as LP284, which again wasn't even in our portfolio less than 2 years ago, less than 1 year ago. So this development at this kind of pace are things that just weren't being done as little as 7 years ago in cancer drug development, and certainly not at this cost. In addition to aggregating data for RADR, we're also expanding algorithms within the RADR to better utilize our data lake. I'm going back to the history of the company. We had about 3 or 4 algorithms that's focused on very specific problems related to differential gene analysis, which was the building blocks of looking at patient stratification and signature creation. But as many of you know, algorithms can solve a variety of problems related to a workflow or to the creation of a solution. And as the algorithms become more powerful, more predictive, they can actually begin now training themselves on our massive data sets to create insights and correlations that will accelerate our drug development process. These algorithms can look at very specific questions, such as which gene networks are most likely to be involved in a mechanism. They can look at identifying genes or driver genes in a central biological problem that we're looking at. They can potentially generate combinations that may have been overlooked, or combinations with non-cytotoxic drugs that haven't been even thought about before. Today, we're doing all of those things. In terms of beyond that, we've also demonstrated this past quarter that LP-284 has growing efficacy. We'll be hosting an update on LP-284 in a number of hematologic cancers, specifically in mantle cell lymphoma and double hit lymphomas. I'll now turn over the call to Kishore initially to provide further details on our development programs, and then to David to talk about our financials and update on other key matters of the company. Kishore?
Thank you, Panna. I'd first like to update everyone on the studies directly relevant to clinical trials of both LP-300 and LP-184. The Harmonic trial, which is investigating the efficacy of LP-300 when used in combination with the standard of care carboplatin and pemetrexed, continues to move forward. The retrospective analysis of a multi-center phase 3 trial showed that LP-300, given in combination with chemotherapy, increased the 2-year and overall survival by 125% and 91% in a subset of patients who turned out to be never smokers. What in LP-300's mechanism of action may help explain the survival benefits observed in lung cancer in never smokers? Well, one of LP-300's mechanism of action is to covalently modify the cysteines of certain proteins, potentially inactivating them. Previous and ongoing multi-omics data clearly signify that lung cancer in never smokers has distinct gene and protein expression profiles when compared to lung cancer in smokers. For example, some recent data published in the International Journal of Cancer identify fewer somatic mutations and lesser chromosome instability, but confirm higher frequency of mutations in EGFR and ERBB2. These features that distinguish lung cancer in never smokers are also the proteins that are potential targets of LP-300. In studies that involved the assessment of the direct interaction of LP-300, and some of those sketches are shown on this slide, of the interaction of LP-300 and drivers of lung cancer in never smokers, like the tyrosine kinase ALK or EGFR, LP-300 modified cysteine residues supporting that LP-300 can inactivate tyrosine kinase proteins that are primarily involved with lung cancer in never smokers. LP-300 has been previously shown to act as a chemosensitizer by decreasing the activity of redox proteins, thioredoxin and glutaredoxin, which are often overexpressed in lung cancer in never smokers. Exposure to LP-300 thus has the potential to restore the tumor cells' redox balance, sensitizing the cancer cells to chemotherapy. We have designed the Harmonic trial to prospectively assess the direct survival impact of including LP-300 with standard of care chemotherapy in lung cancer in never smokers. And as Panna stated earlier, we expect to initiate enrollment in the coming months this summer. Moving now to our molecule LP-184, which has shown promise in multiple cancer types, our progress has been focused on moving towards a first in phase 1 human clinical trial later this year. In preparation for this, the non-GLP portion of the required studies has been completed, and the GLP portion will be completed by the third quarter of 2022. In parallel, we'll also have the CMC report to include in our IND application. Based on our current understanding of these timelines, we are well positioned to initiate the human clinical trial before the end of the year. For the phase 1 clinical trial of LP-184, we have identified 4 sites and discussed the trial design with clinical investigators. Parallel to activities that directly enable our clinical trials, we also continue to obtain very exciting and encouraging data on LP-184 that identify additional properties of the molecule, making it relevant in the treatment of tumors with clinical needs. An example of this was mentioned by Panna earlier, where we recently presented results at the AACR annual meeting describing the preclinical efficacy of LP-184 in cancers that metastasize to the brain. This is important because brain metastases occur in approximately 10 to 30% of all cancer cases and represent a much larger proportion of brain-related cancers than primary brain cancers. These brain mets are difficult to treat due to the lack of standard of care treatments that can cross the blood-brain barrier. Given the excellent blood-brain barrier penetration of LP-184, coupled with the broad preclinical activity in diverse tumor types, it was obvious that LP-184 be assessed for activity in brain mets. Our results presented at AACR provide the foundational evidence that LP-184 is equally effective in brain mets of tumors from lung, breast, and melanoma as it is in the primary cells of these tumor types. Our next steps towards developing LP-184 for treating patients with brain mets includes assessment of LP-184 in animal models of brain mets. The CNS pharmacokinetics clearly supports the availability and exposure of the drug in brain tissues. This therefore gives us ample confidence in advancing LP-184 in this important indication that impacts over 100,000 patients in the US annually. I'm not going to now touch upon some exciting observations of LP-184 that relate to a new concept, the concept of synthetic lethality. Synthetic lethality is gaining greater recognition as a mechanism to specifically target tumor cells. In multiple studies, LP-184 has demonstrated a novel synthetically lethal relationship in tumors deficient in nucleotide excision repair, tumors we call NERDs, and also in tumors deficient in homologous recombinational pathway, tumors we call HERDs. NERDs and HERDs occur because of mutations in genes in these pathways, and these are the genes that play a role in DNA repair. As many as 10 to 20% of tumors are NERDs or HERDs. Our preclinical data using the response of various tumor cell lines, as well as ex vivo patient-derived PDXs, confirm this synthetic lethal relationship between LP-184 and tumors with such mutations. In fact, robust responses in vivo are also evident in tumors that are resistant to either PARP inhibitors, another synthetic lethal agent, or to DNA damaging agents such as cisplatin. We continue to use RADR and other data-driven approaches to identify mutations in various genes that enhance the sensitivity of LP-184. The information on specific genetic mutations that cooperate to elicit the synthetic lethality of LP-184 is important to allow the preferential killing of tumors, but not normal cells. We are in the process of developing a mutational response signature of tumors that will allow us to best select highly sensitive tumors for our drug candidates. It's also important to mention in this context that LP100 also has a synthetic relationship in NERDs, and we have initiated in silico and targeted wet lab studies assessing the potential of LP100 in combination with PARP inhibitors in a clinical setting. We believe that the results from this study can help further de-risk and pinpoint the use of LP100 in cancer patients. I will now turn the call over to David Margrave, our CFO, who will provide an overview of our first quarter financial results. David?
Thank you, Kishore, and good afternoon, everyone. I will now share some of the financial highlights from the first quarter. Our R&D expenses were $2.7 million for the first quarter of 2022, up from $1.3 million in the first quarter of 2021. The increase in R&D expense was primarily attributable to increases in manufacturing-related expenses for product candidates, research studies, and an escrow payment released to Alarity under the Alarity Asset Purchase Agreement, which payment was a non-recurring expense. General and administrative expenses were $1.4 million in the first quarter of 2022, up from $1.2 million for the prior year period. We recorded a net loss of approximately $4.1 million for the first quarter of 2022, or 38 cents per share. As of March 31, 2022, we had approximately 10.8 million shares of common stock outstanding and outstanding warrants to purchase approximately 891,000 shares and outstanding options to purchase approximately 178,000 shares. These warrants and options, combined with our outstanding shares of common stock, give us a total fully diluted shares outstanding of approximately 1.9 million shares as of March 31, 2022. Panna mentioned our share repurchase program, and through March 31, 2022, the company has repurchased a total of 475,157 shares. Of those, 353,667 shares were purchased in the first quarter of 2022. Our cash position, including cash equivalents and marketable securities at March 31, 2022, was $65.2 million. This balance is expected to carry us into 2025. Importantly, we believe our solid financial position will fuel continued growth and evolution of our RADR AI platform, accelerate the development of our portfolio of targeted oncology drug candidates, and allow us to introduce additional targeted products and collaboration opportunities in a capital-efficient manner. Consistent with our focus on capital efficiency, in September 21, as Panna mentioned, we created an Australian subsidiary with the objective of enabling Lantern to take advantage of Australia's R&D tax incentive program, which provides tax offsets for eligible R&D expenditures. We see this program as providing us with the opportunity to conduct selected upcoming preclinical and clinical studies and trials with increased financial flexibility and capital efficiency. As Kishore previously discussed, we've already initiated preclinical and IND enabling studies through our subsidiary in Australia. As mentioned on prior calls, we're migrating to a hybrid work environment, and I'm proud to say our team continues to be very productive under this operating model. This hybrid model removes geographic restrictions to our hiring initiatives, which also gives us the ability to recruit extremely high caliber team members that otherwise might not be available. We've maintained discipline in managing our headcount and we currently have 16 employees who are primarily focused on leading and advancing our research and development efforts. We see our number of employees expanding slightly in coming quarters as we add additional experienced and talented individuals to help advance our mission. At the end of April, we announced that Dr. Maria Maccaccini was nominated for election to our board of directors. She is the current CEO, president, and a director of Innovus Bio, Inc., a biopharma company focused on developing therapies for neurodegenerative diseases. And if elected, she will bring decades of experience in progressing drug candidates through late-stage clinical trials. Dr. Maccaccini will be presented alongside a slate of 5 existing directors at Lantern's upcoming annual meeting to be held on June 8, 2022. I'll now turn the call back to Panna for some final comments. Panna?
Thank you, David. I believe we're very well positioned today. We continue to have very strong fiscal discipline, strong balance sheet, and great oversight of our programs. Our focus is on leveraging our intellectual knowledge and our unique capabilities around scientific strategy and clinical trial design, and on AI platform development, while we work with CROs and leading cancer centers to accelerate our trials and our studies. This model enables us to keep our company lean and mission focused while allowing us the flexibility to increase or decrease the studies, the trials, the wet lab work as they're needed, and also as results dictate. During the year, we expect to bring multiple assets into focused clinical trials in 2022, where there's demonstrated patient need or where there's really no proven therapy, for example, brain mets or ATRT, while remaining focused on capital efficiency. We'll continue to take initiatives this year to make our dollars go further, such as with the Australia subsidiary, potentially looking at additional partnerships, focusing on non-dilutive funding through grants and other mechanisms. Additionally, our AI platform RADR will continue to grow significantly across all measures: data, analytical rigor, generation of new publishable insights, and new functionality. As data and AI continue to drive changes in the cost, speed, and efficiency of drug discovery and development, our team at Lantern will remain at the forefront of transforming oncology therapeutic development. So with that, now I'd like to open up the call to any questions.
Thank you, Panna. If you would like to ask a question, you can do that in one of 2 ways. You can either use the raise hand tool if you wish to speak directly to management, and I will enable you to speak, or you can type your question directly into the Q&A tool. We have a couple of questions coming in already. One from Keith Thompson. Lantern is the only company I know of that mentions the size of its AI data bank. Why is that? Is 20 billion plus a large or small number related to AI in the biospace?
I think it's good to report how the progress of the data lake is, because it gives you a sense of what are the types of things our team is focused on, what is the velocity of the increase, what cancers, what data types. Gives you a sense of what are the questions that we're going to be exploring and what is the roadmap for development. I'm sure there are other companies that talk about the numbers. I don't think many have the same kind of discipline in terms of reporting them, or some might be afraid to report it. But I do see other companies in drug development. I think broadly in bio, I do see as many of the synthetic bio companies reporting similar types of metrics. So yeah, it's definitely a growing thing to report the number of kind of the data elements or data types or unique sets of data. Thank you for that.
Sure. The next question here, and I see Michael Samuels is asking to raise his hand. And so, Michael, I will allow you to speak, if you can unmute yourself. Michael, I believe you are still on mute.
Okay. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, we'll move on. Any worries related to your cash runway?
David?
I can speak to that. I think the answer is no. I think we all recognize that focus on cash availability and your cash runway is very important for companies in our space. That's something we do constantly. As Pana recognized, this is a challenging environment. We're well aware of that. We're quite focused on maintaining capital efficiency and keeping the lean, disciplined environment that we've been able to maintain to this point. We see if we do those things, we don't see cash runway as an issue for us. Anything you would add to that, Pana?
No, I think we've given guidance. So we've got cash into 2025, which I think we'll have a lot of developments between now and then. So, we should be cognizant, but we're not worried.
Okay, and I see a John Newman is asking to speak. John, I will allow you to go ahead and ask your question.
Hi there, thanks. And thanks for taking my question, gentlemen. I just had a question about the phase 2 Harmonic study for LP300 in never smokers. Just curious if that study will be including patients with brain mets. And I'm wondering if brain mets are any more or less common in never smoker lung cancer patients than smokers. Thanks.
I think brain mets would exclude people from the trial. So
Yes,
yeah,
that's
so
correct.
So unfortunately, it would confound the results of the study. And since brain mets is not the indication for LP300, it probably makes sense for them to have a different care path, if that was the nature of your question. In terms of the, I think there was a second part, right, to that question, LP300, besides the brain mets. John, what was the second part of that?
Just curious if it's known whether brain mets are any more or less common in the never smoker patients. So perhaps never smoker patients wouldn't have as many brain mets. So there really wouldn't be many restrictions on them receiving the drug in the real world if it were approved.
I can take that. No, I mean, even non-smokers, even lung cancer in non-smokers, there are brain mets. There's not sufficient data that I can point to, but I think there's equal risk whether the lung cancer occurs in smokers or non-smokers.
Yeah, and that's accurate from the anecdotal data, but there's no comprehensive data I've seen in terms of percentage of brain mets from various smoking types.
And can you maybe talk about any type of genetic or biomarker data that you'll be collecting from the never smoker patients?
Yeah, I'd love to. Kishore, you want to give them a
Yeah,
overview
sure.
of that?
Yeah, so we have an exploratory endpoint where we are looking at circulating DNA to see if we can get early indications of responses. But in addition to that, we are also going to collect already available genomic data from the archival tissues to be able to do more direct correlations in terms of the response, the patterns of response, so on and so forth. But all these are exploratory studies at this point.
Yeah, we'll be taking liquid biopsy at enrollment after 3 cycles, 6 cycles, and at end of study. And so we may find some unique set of biomarkers correlated to some of the observations. But again, those are exploratory at this point, but we may use them in later stage phases.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Very good questions from John.
Okay, and I'm not seeing that we have any additional questions, so I'll give everyone a few moments if you would either like to type in your questions in the Q&A tool, or if you would like to speak directly to management, feel free to use the raise hand tool. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in here. Pana, would you like to make any final remarks?
No, we look forward to talking more with investors and shareholders as the quarter continues. We plan on having several updates on not only our existing clinical trials, but some of the other programs and partnerships that we'll be creating. So thank you all for attending, and we hope you found this as informative as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.